right, here we go again with another NAM video here with Rocky Andrews, President for the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. I, of course, am Frank Ray, NRAP Daily on the National Real Estate Post. And today we just wanted to have a little conversation about, what it's like being a mortgage broker when it comes down to price, right? And I'm going to go full disclosure, right? So I got into the mortgage brokerage business in January of 1987, and I brokered literally. I had a little stint of 3 years where I worked for Wells Fargo, but my entire career as a mortgage broker ended my origination career as a mortgage broker. And I'll just kind of open this up, Rocky, is the way I always handled pricing with the wholesalers was, the last company I worked for was pretty big. We probably were approved with, probably 25 or so wholesalers. And this is back in the day when there was that many. I mean, it was a lot, right? And, but for me personally, I probably had my three, that I went to pretty much all the time. But once in a while, you'd see one of them pop up, that I don't normally work with, who had just some amazing price. That was like, wow, that's really, really good pricing, and sometimes if I went that direction, it would work out okay. But oftentimes if I went that direction, I found myself in quite a mess because it was just somebody, some company I wasn't used to, didn't know them that well, didn't quite get the way they flowed, etc. And then it wound up being kind of a problem for me and my borrower. Not all the time, but sometimes that happened. But I mean, what are your thoughts on pricing, best practices, if you will, when it comes to placing that loan for that consumer? I mean, do you always go for just the lowest price on, rate sheet, or what's the deal?
Well, it's tough, and it's been really tough, recently in response to COVID, because the pricing has been so variable. Your best lenders get inundated, and then their turn times go out of whack. So even though you got a good relationship with people, they may not be the best place to send a loan right now. So I've done a little bit of experimenting, and sometimes you send it to a new lender and you find out you really like them and that they've got a good system in place. There's one lender I'm working with right now that's got great technology and great pricing. But what happened was they were discovered by quite a few people, I think.
And
now their turn times are 8 to 10 days, which, if you set the expectation with your borrower, that's not a problem. But the longer you wait, the more things bad can go wrong, can happen, right?
Right.
Rates can drop. They want a lower rate. All of a sudden they're let go at work.
Anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, especially on refinances, you want to get them closed as soon as possible. But historically, like you did, you establish relationships with 2 or 3 lenders that you count on, that were consistent in their underwriting, and that, in my past history, most of them had good account reps. A good account rep saves you a lot of time and a lot of headaches.
Right.
And some people underestimate the value of a good account rep.
Yeah, and I guess what it kind of, the question then comes down to sort of this is, as a broker, the whole point of being a broker is you have your freedom of choices. You have choices for the borrower. You have, flexibility. You can find an appropriate lender that matches a borrower best. But for your plain vanilla deals, I guess that, where you've got your high FICO, it's very simple, refi deal, low LTV refi deal. Everybody's gunning for the lowest rate. And so I guess the question comes down to this is like, well, if lender A has a lower rate than lender B, but I know that the experience for me and my borrower is going to be better at lender B, do I just go with lender B, or am I being, the dreaded word, unethical, in some way, to not at least send it to the lowest priced wholesaler, knowing, that there could be some problems going down this path? Is that part of being ethical? Is that part of being, I don't want to use that word ethical. Is that part of being a benefit to the borrower, knowing that, yeah, technically on their rate sheet, they're technically lower than this rate sheet, but this one I know we're going to get done in a proper way and in a proper time frame. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and what I found is that your job as a broker isn't to pick for your customer, it's to educate them so that they can make an educated guess. I remember back in the late 90s, Provident, and nothing against Provident, but they had amazing pricing, but you knew they were going to beat you up. And I would tell the borrower, I can get you the lowest rate, but you're going to hate the experience. It's going to take longer than normal. And when you come out of it, you're going to probably hate them and hate me too, you know. Or would you rather go over here where it's going to get, it's maybe $500 more, but you're going to be happy, it's going to go fast, and you're not going to have the headaches. And when you present it that way, most of them, would go with your recommendation. Some of them would say, I don't care, I want to go with the lowest price. And you go, okay, just remember, I warned you. And then half the time they end up switching halfway through. But I mean, yeah, I'm not trying to pick on anybody here. I was just
no, not at all. Yeah, no, please. Yeah, if anybody's whoever's watching, don't please come on. Let's be grown-ups here. We're not doing that. Interesting. So you actually, I'm just trying to think back because it has been 13 years since I originated, but I'm looking back. I don't know that I necessarily, when I was sitting with a customer and I had my lenders we were approved with, I don't necessarily know that I sat with them and said, I can go here, here, or here, and this is my experience with those lenders, and this is the difference in pricing. I don't know that I ever did that, but are you saying that's kind of how you handle it? You kind of go, I got these are the worst places I can go. These guys are priced better, but if you have some input on them, you just say, but here's my experience with them.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's this lender has good pricing, but they're cookie cutter, and you have a more troublesome file. You're self-employed and you've got declining income. We're going to be much more apt to get this through quickly and without any headaches if we go here, and that's true. I mean, some lenders have very knowledgeable and educated underwriters. Some of them are overworked and new to the business, and they just, once there's a problem in there, it slows the whole process down. So, I mean, I don't necessarily explain that to them. I just kind of, say, your file's going to go better over here.
Interesting. Yeah. So it doesn't always come down to the price, obviously. So, yeah. And so you're actually, I guess that's what we're actually seeing right now too, is because of COVID and because of not really, well, you could say COVID is having this effect on interest rates, and interest rates are just so crazy low. You're seeing wholesalers really fluctuate in pricing across the board. I mean,
yeah,
that's got to be
volume thing, right? When they get overloaded, how do they slow down the pipeline?
Sure,
they raise rates,
bump
right?
Price. Yeah.
Even the good lenders do that, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you got to deal with it somehow. Yeah.
So and again, you have to have more than one, right?
Yeah.
You got to have a couple of backups.
This is and this is the great thing about being a broker, is that you have that ability, right? You have the ability to look and see where people are, where companies are on their pricing, and they are changing the pricing based on volume, et cetera. And so you can see, well, this one who's normally the leader now is bumped up, but these guys suddenly are really good. So you can make that shift, which is really one of the, the main points about being a broker is, having the freedom to choose, you know what I mean? Having the freedom to float around and do what you want to do. I remember when my brief stint that I had at Wells Fargo, it was interesting. I did get in when there was a little kind of refi boom happening, and I went from brokering to Wells Fargo. And I'm not talking bad. Let's get this on the record. Not saying anything bad about them, but at the time they had to do that. They had to. As soon as I got over there, it was kind of a refi craze, but they were slammed, so they had to bump stuff. So they had to bump their pricing. So I went over there as an originator and walked into. Today's the day we're bumping prices. Like, oh, today I just got here. You know what I mean? And they bumped prices, and I just had that's all I had to work with, because I was just, I was the retail guy at Wells. Nothing wrong with that, but I couldn't really broker it. Now they did allow brokering, but it was kind of not the favorite thing for them to do. But that just, eventually I went back to the broker channel just because, I needed that flexibility. I needed that ability to not necessarily be stuck with one funding source, you know what I mean, to be able to move that around.
Yeah, and it's like I remember we dealt with Ohio Savings, which was a great wholesaler back in the late '90s, early 2000s, and we would send them a majority of our business. And one day, one of their help desk guys gave us bad info, and one of my LOs originated 5 loans under his bad info.
Wow.
And they came back. We told them that, and they said, "Well, no, that's wrong. You can't do it that way." They go, "How many of those loans do you have?" And we said 5. And so they said, "Give us the loan numbers on all 5, and we'll do those loans." So they honored their commitment. And what they did was basically seal the relationship for life. Versus
Sure.
another lender, you go and you go through the whole product, and they go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and then you submit the loan, and they go, "Oh yeah, we don't do cash out anymore."
Mm,
And now, all of a sudden they've kind of lost me as a customer,
right.
instead of honoring their word and taking care of it. So it's hard times and difficult times is where you learn who your true partners are, and people that want to have a long-term relationship with you as a broker and aren't just trying to build their volume with low price right now.
Yeah, so I guess we'll wrap this up just posing the question to, obviously this is pointed toward our mortgage broker audience. How do you handle it? How do you view it? I mean, you're trying to get your customer the best rate, but sometimes the wholesaler that has the best rate might not be the one you necessarily want to run the borrower through. How do you deal with that? What do you feel is your best practice when it comes to pricing as a mortgage broker? And just out of curiosity to see what you guys have to say, and for anybody else who's watching, it might be very useful to other brokers out there who might be struggling with this a little bit. So
Yeah.
that's how I think I would like to
And
leave
some
this.
lessons are hard learned, aren't they?
Yes, they
Through
are.
experience.
There's a lot of them. Yeah, there are. So with that, great, awesome. Well, thanks, Rocky, for being here. And next week we'll talk about something else of interest. That I'm looking forward to talking about. So you all have a great weekend, and in the following week, I hope you guys do really, really well and are very wild, very successful. And I hope all your transactions go very smooth. And all your borrowers stay very, very happy. That's what I hope for you. Yep. So leave us your comments down below. Forward, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys later here at the NREP Daily with the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. We'll see you. Awesome.